إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد بعدد كل داء ودواء وبارك وسلم عليه وعليهم كثيرا.
بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Surah Al-Fatiha, everybody. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله. Welcome back to another session of Deeper Seerah, where we take a deep dive into the prophetic journey of Rasulullah. I didn't say prophetic life because the prophetic life are other courses. This is more a prophetic journey. Today we're having a look at the land of Arabia. And no Seerah is complete without knowing the geography, topography, society, and culture of the place. Most people who teach Seerah, they speak to you a bit about what they understand to be pre-Islamic Arabia. They speak to you a bit about the customs without context. They speak to you about the land without context. And that's about it. They won't talk to you about true pre-Islamic society based in antiquity, in late antiquity, and how it interacted with other people around it. They won't speak to you about the culture, and they certainly will not speak to you about the topography of Arabia. So as a result, you're left with a mental image of a desert and sand dunes. So when the companions were migrating from Mecca to Abyssinia, you're thinking sand dunes. When they were migrating from Mecca to Medina, you're thinking sand dunes. Am I correct in saying this?
Yes.
Right, okay. So,
Yes.
After today's lecture, I hope I can completely change your mind on what Arabia is. And we're building this 10 lecture series before the actual Seerah that gives you a framework. As I said to you, it gives you you can close your eyes and you'll have a visual map. So then you just put each of the stories in the right place. And it's like a walkthrough, like an Assassin's Creed walkthrough. So at any time, you can close your eyes and you can start walking this journey of the companions and everybody else. This is one of the prime ideas of doing the 10-part pre-Seerah series. And it's essential anyway. If you really want to understand the Seerah, it's essential. We can talk about King Arthur in England. King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table, and everybody's going to say, okay, yes, there was King Arthur, and then there was the Round Table, and they used to do this and that. But what's the context? What was the land of England like back then? What was the political climate? What was the weather like? Where did Robin Hood fit into it, if he did? Did he even exist? What were villages like? What were the towns like? Was it feudalism? How did the feudal lords interact with King Arthur? See, all of these things, if you don't know this, then all you know is just King Arthur exists in space. So likewise, if you don't know the pre-series, the Seerah just sits in space. And every image that you conjure up in your head is your own conjuring that may be incorrect. And we want to give you as correct as picture as possible for the Seerah. So this gives a better understanding of events and creates a more accurate visual image in one's minds. Most people have a skewed image of the Arabian Peninsula. They think deserts. They think it's all desert with huge sand dunes And that actually is a creation of Hollywood. Yes, there are deserts in the world. There is the Gobi Desert. And all deserts are hot and cold, by the way. They become freezing at certain parts of the year, and at night especially, they become very cold. The Sahara Desert, we have the Gobi Desert, we have the Thar Desert in Pakistan, we have the Khizil in Uzbekistan and Kyrgyzstan, Turkmenistan, most of it is desert. We have deserts in Iran, Iraq. Most parts of these countries where you think you have a desert, yes, you have deserts, but they're not the deserts that Hollywood has led you to believe. Very few places have those kind of huge dunes. And we never look at it right now. So here, sorry, I was just going to bring up someone. It says someone is talking or not talking. If anybody's typing, can they stop typing, please? Because it's the screen's being recorded and it's going to come up on the recording. I'll just put it down on the bottom. That's probably the best what I can do. Okay, so this is what comes to mind. So when everybody thinks of deserts, every film you see, this is what you see. You see huge sand dunes like this. And for hundreds of miles, you see huge sand dunes and you think, wow, this is it. Temperatures of 50 degrees, nothing living, no animals, nothing, just a camel and you. Actually, what you've just seen here represents the area on this map called al-Rubʿ al-Khālī, which means the empty quarter. This area straddles only probably a third of the Arabian Peninsula, and it's towards the southern end of what we know as today to be Saudi Arabia. Parts of it are in Yemen, parts in Oman, parts in the UAE. In one of our forthcoming lectures, I'm going to give you a book to read that's to do with somebody, British, one of only two people 70, 80 years ago that traversed this part, and nobody had done this before that. Not many people live there for obvious reasons. It constitutes the largest portion of the Arabian Desert. It covers an area of about 250 square miles, 1,000 kilometers long and 500 kilometers wide. Lesser portions are in Yemen, Oman, and the United Arab Emirates. It is the largest area of continuous sand in the world. So you're thinking, well, the Sahara Desert's the largest desert in the world. How can this constitute the largest desert in the world? Because it's the largest continuous sand area. As I said to you, most deserts are not completely sand, right? We'll see pictures of it later on. This is a continuous area of sand. It occupies more than 1/4 of Saudi Arabia's total area and features varied topography. Its surface elevation varies from 800 meters in the southwest to sea level in the northwest. Some of the sand dunes are up to 250 meters high. So that's something that's like very difficult to fathom. Like when you run a 100-meter race, you know how far that 100 meters in, double that and then add a bit more. That's how high some of these dunes are, and you have to traverse them, and the sand slips down and it's very difficult, and that's the reason why people don't really live there, and there's nothing there anyway. They do live on the outskirts, and we'll see that as well. It's interspersed with gravel and gypsum plains. There are also brackish salt flats in some areas. 6,000 years ago, there were lakes there. In the past, there were hippopotamus, water buffalo, and cattle. So most of these deserts, only in the recent past, they weren't deserts, and they were populated by these kind of animals. The largest oil fields in the world are located there. 1 second. Desertification has increased over time, and the once passable caravan trails are virtually impossible now. Forgive me for the typos. So when we do the lesson on pre-Islamic Arabian trade, you'll see the caravan routes, and you'll see that the routes would traverse the edge of the desert. It was possible back in the day, but today, due to global warming and desertification and the use of more water, it's led to the desert becoming larger than what it is, and areas that were passable are no longer passable today. until about 300 AD, people would traverse this through routes through the frankincense trade, which inshallah is a whole topic in itself we're going to talk about. It's been suggested that the lost city of Aram, please pardon my typos here, that the lost city of Aram mentioned in the Quran is in this area. I personally don't believe it's in this area. People say it's in this area, but I have my own suggestions, which I'll put forward when we talk about those things, when they come up, those verses come up in the Quran, and when we discuss those various cities in the Arabian Peninsula, why I believe that Aram is not in the southern desert, it's actually in the north. Has anybody ever seen this picture before? It's a very famous picture. It was featured on the National Geographic front page of the magazine. Anybody seen this picture before? Yes, no?
No.
This was taken by a passing plane overhead. You're not actually seeing the camels. What you're seeing are the shadows of the camels. Does it make sense what I'm saying now?
So all of these are shadows.
Right, yeah. So if you look at each shadow and look at the feet of where the shadow ends, look at the feet. Can you see there's like a shape? Those shapes are the actual camels. And because it's been taken from right above the camels, right, you can't see the camels very clearly, but you can see the shadow cast by the sun. Do you get it now?
Yes, it looks much clearer now. It looked like a picture, as in like, on pottery or something. But
Yeah.
now, when again, after you mentioned, I can see the camels and then the shadows.
Yeah, this is actually an amazing picture. It's a very once in a lifetime chance. Since then, people have replicated it, but this was a long time ago in the, like when it was very difficult to get still photography and stuff like that, where you didn't have stabilization. So you can see the camels and then you can see the shadows cast by the camels. And it's interesting that the camels walk along paths. So each of them is following the other. And that's one of the good things about camels. And that's why in caravan trails, you'll see them also walking in paths. Now, there's a few links I'm going to post. And as I always tell you, that please do the extra reading and do the extra, any link I give you, any link or even if it's like half a page, please read it because I'm trying to build pictures here that nobody else is going to do for you. Now, did you know that the desert has its own music? Have you ever heard of this before? Hello, I've got a few people in the class. Somebody speak. You're all welcome to speak. I want interaction. Come on, this isn't a YouTube talk. This is a Zoom interactive classroom. Did anybody know? It's okay. If I hear three voices in tandem, that's even better. So one person doesn't need to speak for everybody. I want to hear everybody's voice. So have you ever heard of the music of the dunes before?
Yeah, I have.
Right. What do you know about it?
Not much, but I've just heard like this. It's people say it sounds weird.
Yes.
The sound.
Right. Now, the reason I really want you to hear this is for two reasons. First of all, don't forget, Rasul ﷺ traversed the desert many times on his own. The companions did it many times, and even some Sahabiyat did it alone. Right? Or they lived in the desert. You'll read this in the Sīrah stories, inshallah. And many a brave Bedouin traverses the desert late at night. Now, there's two problems with this. The first problem is that the desert is the haunt of jinns. There are stories in our Islamic tradition that mention this. There are even Thizijah in his story mentions that the companions he was with, one night, one of them, a jinni overtook him and he started screaming and wailing. And imagine in a pitch black desert where all of a sudden one of your guys goes crazy. And then they were reciting over him and then they managed to get rid of it. And the desert, you think it's completely silent, but when the sand falls, right? The desert's shifting all the time, so the sand's falling. And as the sand falls, each sand grain makes a noise, and that noise is amplified, and it becomes a very, very strange sound. It's a sound that you wouldn't think you'd hear coming from sand. So that's what makes it even more eerie. There are many videos on this. I tried to find a few. This is one I found. There's another video I found. It was like a short, just a 20-second clip where it sounded very clear. I lost it, so I couldn't post it. But this is a longer one. But you can do your own searching. Search this video. I'm gonna put the links for you. Just have a look at this video and then listen to a few more. It's a very eerie sound. And the reason I want you to know this is because for sure your Prophet ﷺ knew about this sound. For sure, the companions knew about this sound. So when you walk the desert alone at night or in the daytime, especially when you're walking across dunes, this is a sound that you hear, and it's a very eerie sound. So people, as I said to you, assume that deserts look like what you're looking at, but actually that's just al-Khālī. Most deserts look like this. And especially when you're going towards Mecca and Medina, this is what it looks like. It's very difficult to traverse because there is a lot of volcanic stones. And if any of you has been to Arabia and you've gone to Mecca, from Mecca to Medina on a bus, you'll see on the side of the roads, all you'll see on both sides is this. So you have flat sand in large parts of the desert, and in large parts of the desert you have this. This is exactly what you have. Right? So this is only in Hollywood or in al-Khālī where nobody goes, right? Nobody's going to go there. You're certainly not going to go there. So we can forget about that style of desert. We're more concerned with this. Why are we concerned with this? Because this features in the Seerah, and this is, that Rasul ﷺ would have passed through places like this. The companions passed through places like this, and it features in one of the battles, and we'll mention that as we move along. So here again, this is what the desert looks like. So it's either going to be a flat sand like you're seeing, or it's going to be rocky like this. And this rock comes from volcanic activity. And if you look here in this picture, you can see there is a shape being made. Right, so if you start from the right-hand side, you can see the rocks powered up and it goes into the distance and it goes off into the left. This is a mystery. This is something we're going to look at in another lecture, inshallah. But this is a great mystery in all of the deserts of Arabia. So we're talking Jordan, Syria, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, and I'm not going to spoil it for you. I'm going to leave it just there. So here's a map of Saudi Arabia. The old names are given, right? This is, I don't know where I took this from, but I just saw the name Tadmor. Tadmor is the name for Palmyra. Tadmor, if you know anything about the recent war in Syria, Tadmor was a prison that ISIS blew up. That was where the regime would hold political prisoners and torture them. It was made by the French. It was a very ugly prison. ISIS blew it up. And Edessa, obviously you can see the name Hatra. These are old names, right? Hira, that would be in Iraq today. Dumat al-Jandal is northern Saudi Arabia. These are names we're all going to come across, inshallah. It's just a brief. I'm just going to mention them now. Petra, we'll come across that. We will discuss that as well. Didan, we will talk extensively about these areas. Yathrib is Medina, and Mecca, Taif, you can see going all the way down to Najran. So if you look on the left coast, from Darfur in the left all the way up to Petra, you can see like a gray color. That's mountainous, right? So al-Khālī is in the plain area. Then on the left coast, you have what's completely mountains. From top to bottom, you have a string of mountains. I like using pictures, by the way. I get carried away using pictures. So here, if you look at this map, if you look at Saudi Arabia, if you look at the left side of Arabia, you can see the mountains. From the top, from all the way from Aqaba and the Sinai, moving all the way down to Yemen. And they get really high, especially when you get towards Yemen. You can see how high the mountains get. So you can contrast them to the mountains in Iran, and Kurdistan. You can see that over there. And then beyond Iran, you can see they call it Turkmenia, which today would be known as Turkmenistan, which is all desert. It's flat desert. And above that, you can see the Aral Sea, which no longer exists. The Soviet plans, their 5-year plans that they did, they totally destroyed that sea. It's in 2 pieces now. It's a tenth of itself. It's split in 2. Part of it is in Kazakhstan, part of it is in Uzbekistan. A totally destroyed area. But coming back to Arabia, you can see in Iran, the mountains. And then you can see Rubʿ al-Khālī is flat. And then parts of like Najd is a plateau, it's high. And then the left side is complete mountains. Now that's very important to know. You can also see the mountains carry on into Africa. So if we were to join, because what actually happened is at some point in the past, as we know that the earth is made of tectonic plates, the Arabian Peninsula separated from the African continent that created the Red Sea. So there's a rift. So that's why you have mountains on both sides, and you can actually see some of those rifts when you're walking in the mountains as well. And as a result, there is a lot of volcanic activity there, which we look at as well. Right, so here to just give you a comparison. So the mountains of Arabia are no way as high as the mountains of Pakistan, Nepal, Tibet, China, Afghanistan. You can see how high they are compared to Arabia. But for Arabia, they are very high. Right, for map enthusiasts, I'm going to give this as a link. I want all of you to have a look at this for your own research. They have 2D, 3D, and panoramic views of maps of Arabia, showing you clearly the mountains, and you can zoom in and zoom out. It's really worth looking at. Right, so there are 4 parts to the peninsula. Everybody who thought that it was a Hollywood desert, there are actually 4 different types of terrain in the peninsula. You have the western highlands, which are the mountains. They run the length of the Red Sea from the top of Arabia to the Yemen in the south, reaching its highest point in Yemen, Jabal al-Nabi Shu'aib. So they call it Jabal al-Nabi Shu'aib at 12,000 feet. That's very high, right? The highest mountain in Saudi Arabia is Jabal al-Sawda, which is also very high. The interior wastes, Rubʿ al-Khālī, which we just showed you. And then there is the Nafud desert in the north, which is a stony desert, as I showed you before, the pictures. And it moves into Syria and Jordan, and it's more or less kind of like flat, small hills and stones. The southern part, which is today Yemen and Oman, is endowed with rain and mountains, plunging valleys, and beautiful coastlines. They also benefit from the monsoon rains. So the monsoon rains, which start due to the highlands of India, the Himalayas mountains. I'm on the other side, Uzbekistan. We don't get the monsoon rains, but on this side of the mountains, the monsoon rains move into China, into Southeast Asia, into Pakistan, India, and into the Indian Ocean, and they hit parts of Oman and Yemen. So now, straight away, you know where there's rain, you're gonna get lush greenery. Now, this is what most people don't know about the Arabian Peninsula. Then we've got the hot and humid eastern plains of the eastern seaboard. So the eastern side, so we're talking about everything from Kuwait going all the way down to Oman. That's, again, desert. And the color of the desert there is white. The sand that I saw when I was there is kind of whitish. However, there is groundwater there. So that's why people live there and people do travel there, and groundwater is available in that area, even though it's brackish and it may not be the best to drink. There is groundwater there. So the Sumerians and the other peoples traded in this area. Dilmun is an ancient name for Bahrain, and it had links with the Indus Valley civilization. So we're talking about Harappa, Mohenjo-Daro, if anybody knows these Indus Valley civilizations. They were at the same time as the Sumerians, and this was a trading link. This is a very important trading link. And all along that area, Sumerians had influence, then it was the Akkadians, the Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Iranians. And that's why if you look at the gene pool, you will see the people in that area, they look like Indians, they look like Iranians, their culture, they have Pakistani, Indo-Pak, and Iranified kind of cultural idioms. Not idioms, cultural expressions, and you can see it in their clothing. And in Qatar, they will call a shoe juti. We call it juti, right? They will actually call it juti. That's from the Indian. That's from the Pakistani, Indian, Punjabi, whatever language you want to call it. In the south, we had magnificent kingdoms. We had magnificent civilizations. In the Arabian Peninsula, the Sabaeans, we know them as Saba. The Queen of Sheba was from there. The Minayans, the Katabaneans, and the Hadramites. That's Hadramaut. And these civilizations no longer exist. They were, especially the Sabaeans, they were just as magnificent as Babylon or as Assyria or as ancient Egypt. And most people don't know this about the Arabian Peninsula. Unfortunately, everybody teaches you, everybody in Sīrah will teach you that they were Arabs. Not one of these people were Arabs, and I will go through the research of why they weren't Arabs. Those peoples from that side, there's been cultural interchange with Africa in the Western Seaboard and with Persia and India in the Eastern Seaboard. So especially when you look at Yemen and the people from Southern Arabia and Yemen, there's a lot of black admixture. We're not talking about slavery here. We're talking about, because they are a stone's throw away from Africa, there's been and the Aksum Empire, which we look at, the Aksum Empire was the empire of Abraha. He's the one that marched north to attack, to destroy the Kaaba. So there was a lot of interchange anywhere. And you will see, especially if you've, there's two extremes to the Arabian Peninsula. There's the Qahtani Arabs and the Adnani Arabs. The Adnani Arabs are very fair, especially when you go up, right? So the Jordanians, the pure Jordanians, we're not talking about the Palestinians, because the Palestinians originally are not Arabs. The pure Jordanian Bedouin Arabs are very fair. You move down and you carry on moving down to the Qahtanis, right by Yemen, you'll find them almost black. And they actually look Indian and Bengali. And there are a few islands off the coast of Yemen and Oman, which people are not aware about. They are called Socotra and a few other names. They don't even speak Arabic there. They speak another language. And those people, they look Indian. And I don't know what their gene pool is, but they look Indian, and you can only assume it's because of the Indian trade that they got there. Even if it wasn't to do with the Indian trade, it's because if you look at the color scheme for the world, the more south you go, the darker people become anyway. So the people in the South Arabians are very short, very dark. They dress very different from the typical Arab dress of the dish dash, the igal, the gutra, the thobe that you see in the north, and they're a bit more fairer. They still wouldn't be as fair as, say, me, but they're fair compared to, especially in the south. They are, like comparatively fairer, even though they're still dark. Arabians are dark. They're always going to be dark. Why? Because look where they live. But in the extreme north, they do become fair. All of this we look at in further lessons, inshallah. We look at all of this, and it's a very, very interesting topic, and most people don't teach it. Alhamdulillah. It interests me, so teach it. I love maps and I love pictures. So on the left-hand side here, you can look at the elevation. You can see the mountain chain, and it's very high until you get to around the area would probably be Gunfada, would probably be Asir, and moving towards Mecca now. And then the elevation starts to go down, but you can see that it's still quite high. It's still at least 1,000 feet, right? That means Mecca is nested around mountains, very high mountains. Taif is very close. Baha is very close. I lived in Baha. It's very cold in the winter. It's a very difficult place to live. And it's like Taif, but Taif is more green. Taif is the breadbasket of Mecca. If it wasn't for Taif, Meccans wouldn't be able to eat back then because there's nothing there. If you look at on the right-hand side, you can see al-Khālī, you can see the Great Nafud Desert, and then you can see the Dahna Desert. These are like deserts. If you move left, you can start to see the terrain rise. You can see the high mountains, and then you can see rocky kind of a desert, right? And I'll show you on Google Earth in a bit. It's not just rock, it's something else. So Arabia is naturally protected. There are many reasons why people don't want to invade Arabia and never did. One of the reasons is that why would you invade desert? You're going to spend your whole treasury to invade a desert that's going to give you no return. That's the reason why all around Arabia, from the south, I mentioned we had the Yemenite, non-Arab empires. We have Egypt, and the Egyptians were a mighty imperial nation, empire. We had the Babylonians, we had Rome, we had the Persians, but yet nobody bothered invading Arabia. Why? Because it's a lose-lose situation. Another reason why they didn't invade, they did control the coastline. Because if you control the coastline, you control certain trade routes and you control trade. So the Persians controlled the eastern seaboard and they controlled the western seaboard for a short time. The Aksumites controlled the western seaboard, the south. We're talking about the south. The Romans and the Greeks did send expeditions, and they did survey large parts of Arabia, by the way, and they have maps. But they didn't stay, they couldn't stay, they suffered losses. Even Napoleon tried, and during the Crusades, I'm not sure if people know about this, but during the Crusades, one of the Crusader warlords, one of the kings, he tried to invade Medina. He got quite close, but didn't quite make it. There was also the case of 2 men sent to dig the grave of Rasulullah, and they got quite close until the ruler had a dream, and today the bottom of the grave is cast in lead. So basically all around the room now is like a lead box, and then everything is into the earth is inside there, so nobody can now dig through. Those 2 guys were hanged. So the east, as we know, the east is a featureless desert. Who's gonna want to invade crossing 1,000 miles of desert? Nobody. The west is a long wall of mountains. So you've got to the minute you get onto land, you hit what's known as Tihama. Now, we talk about Tihama in a minute, but then you hit a wall of mountains. Now, you've got to traverse these mountains to get anywhere, to get to Mecca, to get to Medina, to get to anywhere, you've got to traverse these mountains. Dry, hot, no greenery, no one's going to bother. The south, again, who's going to sail ships? They did try, they did. You're going to sail ships towards the south, and then you're only going to occupy the south because it's green, and that's as far as you're going to go. So Mecca and the Arabian Peninsula was isolated from the rest of the world, yet it wasn't isolated. Now, it's important that I say this because people think that it was a blank canvas, zero-sum game. It wasn't. And I did a talk on a podcast on Jahiliyyah where we mentioned this, and we will, in preceding lectures, we're going to talk about what Jahiliyyah was and how much of Jahiliyyah we understand and how much we don't understand. Now, many of these parts of Arabia I've personally seen because I spent almost 10 years there, alhamdulillah. The Tihama is one of the worst areas in the world to live. When you travel up by road, this was the old Hajj route. People would, when I was there, that was 10 years ago, people told me that 20 years prior, their grandfathers had used camels to go up. Tihama is by the Red Sea, and it's at 0 feet above sea level. The humidity is almost 100%. It's unbearable. Like, I can't explain to you what it's like living in Jazan when I lived there for 4 years. You sweat buckets the minute you leave your house. Just literally, you start sweating buckets. You will just see it. right? And it's an incredibly hostile terrain. And when you're walking along the Tihama coast, on one side you've got the ocean or the Red Sea, and on the other side you can start to see the mountains in the distance. You can see Asir, you can see the mountains, right? So no one's gonna bother. Now it's interesting. The area is called Tihama. Tihama today, as we know it, it's like, a hot, inhospitable place with severe heat and a lack of wind. This is how the Arabs will describe it to you. But the original name is a Proto-Semitic name. If you study the Akkadian, Assyrian religions, and even if you go back to the Sumerians, you'll see these names crop up, right? So Tiamat, right, or Tamtu, as it's in the Akkadian, refers to the female principle. And the female principle mixed with the male principle, which was Azru, I think it was, and then various gods were formed and all this and all that. So and they've deified this. So Tiamat is like a deity as well, right? So because it's to do with the sea, the primordial sea, and it's got a biblical name which is Tam or something. So there's links there, and the name just retained. Today it's lost its meaning, but if you go back, right, the name actually goes back to a deity, a feminine, like the female counterpart of one of their deities in the past. At its greatest width, it's 60 to 80 kilometers. So you've got to walk from the Red Sea about 60 kilometers before you get to the mountains. And the mountains are then very high, and you've got to traverse the mountains. No one's going to bother. In its present meanings, okay, so the Battle of Hamra al-Asad in AD 625, this is a battle that happened between the Muslims in the time of the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, happened in the Tihama, right? So now I've built you a picture. Now, if nobody told you, and nobody's ever mentioned this, nobody actually ever tells you what it feels like to be in the Tihama area, right? So when you think a battle, you're thinking sand dunes, people running up sand dunes, fighting, killing each other, and that's it, right? So now when you come across this battle and you fight, and then the agreement Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam made with the companion who went to Mecca en route, you can picture yourself the extreme temperature, the extreme humidity, and how Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, if it was summertime, even in winter actually, if Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and the companions were standing there talking, even at night time, even at night when the sun goes down, dripping with sweat, Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's clothes would have been completely soaked. The companions' clothes would have been completely soaked. This is that kind of an area. And it's no joke. I lived there for 4 years, and without AC, it's impossible to survive, right? So these are little tidbits and nuances and secrets that enhance your experience of the Seerah, to know these things. So Meccan caravans had to travel this route to avoid the Medinan raids. When the Muslims founded their first state in Medina, obviously they would raid the Meccan caravans, right? And the Meccan caravans would stop en route Medina, and then they would go on to Didan, Al-Ula, and then Taima, and then Tabuk, and then on to Busra, and then on to Damascus or wherever else they were going to. But because now because Medina straddled the trade route, right, they couldn't go that way, so they had to go through the Tihama, right, which was this side of the mountains, because Medina and Mecca are sitting on this side of the mountain, Tihama is on this side of the mountain. They had to go along that route, right? So they suffered as well. And any Muslim group of raiders that went after them would also suffer, because Tihama is not an easy place to be in. It's surrounded on 3 sides by sea. So the Arabian Peninsula is also surrounded. So like I said, it's not easy for anybody to invade. Only from the north you can invade, and you'd see that the Persians never really bothered. The Romans got as far as al-Hijr, right? And we'll talk about that inshallah. And then they didn't go any further. The reason they stayed in al-Hijr, according to my understanding, is because that area was fertile in the sense that there was date palms there. So there was trade, and it was a center of where you have like date palms and oases, you have meeting points and hubs. So they could charge taxes. The Persians charged taxes from those people. The Romans must have done as well, and things like that. Nobody bothered venturing further. So the Arabian Peninsula was protected. Now, when maps were first commissioned, the Arabs would have north and south the other way around, right? So if you look at both of these maps now, this is a map by Muhammad al-Idrisi, right? Both maps, compared to how we know them, are upside down. The reason they were done like this is to show that nothing is above Arabia, right? So nothing. If you look today, from Yemen it's just the Indian Ocean and the Atlantic Ocean meets, and then you can carry on in a straight line to Antarctica. So the idea is nothing is above Arabia. Arabia is nothing overcomes it. It's just Arabia, and that's it. It's at the top of the world, so to speak, you can say. The Germans did the same thing. When the Germans commissioned the world map we have today, you'll see Germany put right in the middle of the world map, right? And the world map is obviously, it's a globe. So when you open the globe out and make a square, especially the northern continents and the southern continents, they're not in proportion anymore. So Greenland looks massive, but really it's not that big. Antarctica will look massive, but it's not that big. And a lot of the, like Russia and those countries, will look absolutely huge. That's because you've opened up a ball into a square and it's impossible. So Germany is distorted as well, but Germany stays in the center of the world. That was done for various reasons, and the same way Al-Idrisi did the same thing here. You can see the maps. You can actually see here, if you look at the right-hand side of the map, it's placed correctly, but if you look at the writing is upside down. Why? Because it should have been the other way around, right? And in the other map, you can see also, and then copies of these maps with the Latin language, you can see also the Latin is the other way around. So even if they show the map the right way around, the writing will always show you that it was supposed to be the other way, read the other way. Right. So Palestine, Gaza, Syria were always wealthy compared to Arabia. The southern kingdoms were wealthy. The northern kingdoms were wealthy because of rainfall, which allows for produce and commerce and trade routes due to water and greenery, right? So these are pictures of Syria. So people assume that Jordan is desert. People assume Syria is desert. They assume Palestine is desert. Iraq is desert. Did you lot assume that, by the way?
Yes.
Right, yeah. Actually, no. Large parts of those countries are not desert. Yes, there is desert in those areas, but there are large parts of Syria that are not desert. Gaza and those areas, yes, there is desert, but there are areas that are not desert. Pure, real desert is only in the Arabian Peninsula. Kuwait, Qatar, Bahrain, Arabia proper, parts of Iran, not all, even Iran looks like this, right? There's a lot of greenery in Iran. Iraq, a lot of greenery in Iraq. So those areas are not desert. There are deserts in those areas, but don't imagine that you're looking at a desert like the al-Khālī. No, you're looking at what you're looking at now. Large parts of what you're looking at now, right? So Egypt, I'm talking about Egypt. Why? Because it's right next to Syria on that, Gaza, and on the southern part, it's next to, it's actually opposite Mecca, right? Now, Egypt is desert, as you can clearly see here. The Sinai mostly is desert. Now, if you can see Palestine on that map, and you can see how it becomes green. And moving up, you can see how it becomes green, and you can see there's clouds. In this satellite image, you can see there's actually clouds above Palestine. So Palestine, Lebanon, I should have shown you beautiful pictures of Lebanon. I didn't, I just remembered now. Lebanon, the mountains of Lebanon are Jannah. They are green and beautiful. You can see cloud cover covering Syria and Palestine there, and obviously the rest of the desert you can't. You can see the Nile, the river Nile. It starts way off in, I think it's in Tanzania somewhere. It's called the Blue Nile when it's in that part of the world, I think, and moving into Sudan, it's the Blue Nile, and then it into Egypt. Now, Egypt is desert. The only reason why Egypt became a civilization that it did is because of the annual flooding of the Nile. So all around the river Nile, you can see there's greenery, and that's where people live, right? Nobody lives in the desert areas. People live around those green areas. And the Nile Delta is a huge delta. You can see it's bigger than Palestine. And that's where a large part of the population also lives. Alexandria is there, and it's not desert. And it's the flooding every year that allows people to live there. In the story of Yusuf alayhi salam, the 7 years of drought, right? So there was no greenery. Now, what I'll show you later on, if I forget, remind me, is on Google Earth, we'll zoom in. You will see fields. People actually plant. Like you'll see people farming all around the Nile Valley. The River Nile, by the way, has crocodiles. They have what's known as freshwater crocodiles, which are the biggest crocodiles in the world. So it's crazy. Imagine an Egyptian farmer in the River Nile. He's farming his field and a crocodile comes up and eats him. Right. This is Iraq. Right. So this is actually the northern region. I wanted to find other areas of Iraq, but I couldn't find pictures. This is Kurdistan, which is the northern area of Iraq. Right. So as you can see, no way is this desert. This is not desert. It's green. The entire area is completely green. And if you look on the right-hand side, you can see villages on top of the mountain there. And on the bottom, you'll see where the wadi, you'll see there's probably villages there as well. Right, the Fertile Crescent, we've all heard of this term. I'm not going to ask you. The Fertile Crescent it was Mesopotamia. Mesopotamia is a Greek word meaning the Fertile Crescent. It's a crescent going from Iraq all the way, like northern Iraq, Syria, southern Turkey, Kurdistan, and then it goes down into Palestine, Gaza, and then actually even Egypt, if you're going to talk about the Nile Delta. But obviously, because there's a gap from Sinai, so most maps just leave it there. Now, this area was the center of human civilization. After the last ice age, before the last ice age, human beings were hunter-gatherers, right? So we were semi-naked, fur skins, animal skins, running around with spears, trying to hunt something to eat. It was only after the last ice age where humanity was pushed down. Human population was very small then, by the way. It was pushed down into this area, and they managed to survive in this area because the ice didn't come this far down, and we learnt farming for the first time. 6,000 years ago, only 6,000 years ago, humankind learnt farming. And farming was the advent of all civilizations. The Aborigines of Australia have been in that area upwards of 50,000 years. 50,000 years cut off from the rest of mankind. Yet there's no civilization. Why? Because they didn't develop farming. You need farming to have a civilization. That's the reason why you have the first civilizations of Sumer. You have the Elamite civilizations in Iran. Then the Indus Valley civilization, which is on the same plane, right? It's on the same latitude. And then even the Yellow River in China, very fertile river. The first civilizations were always by rivers. So you have the Tigris, the Euphrates, you have the Nile, and from Syria all the way to Iraq in the north, it was green. So the north of Arabia is where you could have farming and all of these things. And I'll show you, inshallah, on Google Earth as well. So these are the empires that were in the area. So if we go back to 3,500 years ago, we had, the Ur is where Ibrahim alayhi salam was born. The Sumerian civilization, Susa is an old Elamite, is the capital of the old Elamite kingdom. That was a Persian, I don't know what word to use. The same people that later became the Persians or the Iranians, or it was those kind of people. It was the capital of the empire. Babylonia, very famous, we know from the Bible. Ashur, Assyria, Nineveh. Nineveh is where Yunus alayhi salam was from. The Mitanni states, the Hittite states, the Hittites were Indo-Aryan people. They fought the Egyptians. You can see the Fertile Crescent there. That was a center of civilization for the whole world in the central regions in Asia Minor. Obviously, we had India and the Indus Valley civilization in China, but that's not on this map. So imagine greenery to the northeast and the northwest and in the extreme south. In the interior, imagine it's very dry and barren, although there are oases here and there. So, for example, Riyadh means garden. Hail, you'll see palm trees, and these are oases. That's where people live there. Not many people, we're talking only probably 1,000 or less, used to live in these places, but those dry areas are dotted with oases, and human beings ended up living there. Oases look very beautiful in the middle of the desert. When you come across an oasis, it's very beautiful. Medina was an exception because it's a very large area. Most cities were walled, so they had rudimentary walls. Mecca had no wall because Mecca was a sacred city. Nobody was going to attack Mecca. People would live around the Kaaba. Medina was not a city as such. Medina was a series of settlements. So don't think of Medina as a city as you see it today. Medina was a collection of settlements, various settlements and tribes living and farming. It was date palms. Even when you go today, when you travel by bus from Medina from Khaybar onto Al-Ula and Tabuk, you will see date palms glow. These have always been there. They'll come up in the Sīrah as well. And they're still there, right? So when you see them and when you visit those areas, you're actually looking at a scene for sure your Prophet ﷺ saw, right? So if you're going to close your eyes and say, I'm going to imagine my blessed Prophet ﷺ walking on the desert on a sand dune 250 meters high. No, 99.9% that didn't happen. But if you close your eyes and you imagine what you're looking at right now, this picture, by Allah, you can imagine your Prophet ﷺ walking through these groves. Because this is what Medina and the settlements around Medina and Khaybar were like. They're mentioned like this in the Seerah, and that's exactly how they are today. Right? So an important point to note. Date oases, they're scattered throughout Arabia, but these ones we're going to look at in the Seerah, inshallah. These are areas of farming. A lot of them were run by Jews. To this day, the Jews lament the loss of Khaybar. You can search Khaybar on the internet, you'll come across Jews lamenting to this day. And a lot of the fortresses to this day exist. You're going to get reading material. Now, don't jump ahead of yourself, right, and start reading up stuff, because then you're going to spoil it when I get to teach it. And like I said, you're going to get a picture and I'm going to give you a different picture. And then because your picture would have superseded my picture, it's not going to change. And that's what I don't want, right? I want to put my Seerah in your brains, right? And my Seerah is a tad different from other people's Seerahs, as you probably realized. Right, so another thing, who knew that there were 2,000 dormant volcanoes in the Arabian Peninsula? Who knew this? Come on, everybody, students.
Yeah, I have heard of that.
You've heard of that, yeah? Anybody else?
I've heard of volcanoes, but not 2,000.
Not 2,000. Okay. Girls, you studied the Seerah. Did you ever hear of this?
No,
I don't think it was ever mentioned.
Right,
yeah,
I'm gonna.
we did.
Yeah, sorry, what did you say?
We did hear about like areas where there was volcanic rock, but never about 2,000 volcanoes. No.
Right, get ready. I'm gonna blow your mind now, inshallah. Right, so naturally, look at, as I said to you, the Arabian Peninsula separated from the African plate. It's between the Anatolian plate and the Eurasian plate, right? And we all know how many volcanoes happen in Turkey. Not volcanoes, sorry, earthquakes happen in Turkey. Why? Because it's in a place of tectonic plate movement. Every 20 years, there's a huge earthquake. Yesterday, I felt my building shake. Every couple of months, I feel an earthquake where I'm sitting, right? Because I'm sitting very close to 3 of the highest mountain chains in the world, the Pamir, the Karakoram, and the Himalayas, right? So when I feel it, China feels it, India feels it, Pakistan feels it, and Afghanistan feels it. Sometimes the epicenter is China, I'll feel it. Sometimes the epicenter is in Afghanistan, I'll feel it. Sometimes it's in Kashmir, I'll feel it. We'll all feel it. So as the African plate separated from Africa, there was a cleft. So that's where the Red Sea formed. and there's a ridge. You're gonna obviously naturally you're gonna find a ridge underneath. I'm sure you're gonna find a ridge under the ocean, just as you've got the North Atlantic ridge that's separating every year. And that's why you've also got the high mountains, because where you get plates, one plate goes under, one goes up. Where it goes up, that's where you get mountains forming. And obviously when they grind is where you get the earthquakes. Where you have earthquakes, you're going to have volcanoes as well, because you have fissures in the crust and cracks that cause volcanoes. Now, the Arabian plate was part of the African plate. It split 25 million years ago and caused the Red Sea. This rift led to volcanic activity, right? And we have huge lava tracks. This is why I want to show you Google Earth. Now, did any of you hear of the very famous Madīnah eruption, an earthquake that hit Medina? Did any of you hear of this?
No.
Not an earthquake, sorry, a volcano, a volcanic eruption that almost threatened to destroy Medina. Did any of you hear this? Girls, did you study this in the Seerah?
No.
Right.
No.
Okay. I'll tell you a very amazing story. I'll tell you a miracle. This was prophesied by Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. In your reading material I'm going to give you two different extracts that I want you to read. I don't want to go through it myself because it's too long. You read it for yourselves and you'll enjoy it probably better than hearing my monotonous voice. Now, the Medinan region has the largest share of those volcanoes, right? So the last eruption in the Medina area was in 1256. If you know your history, 1258 was when Hulagu Khan invaded Baghdad and toppled the Abbasid Caliphate. So just 2 years before that, we had a massive volcano exploding, right? The eruption and the flow covered for several days. It erupted and the lava flowed and it expanded over 25 kilometers. The longest flow of lava was only 8.2. So that's around about 5 miles away from the mosque of Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. It was 2 kilometers away from Medina. Just 2 kilometers, right? And Medina was a hamlet. Back then, these cities were tiny, right? So it would have overwhelmed Medina and destroyed Medina. But a miracle happened. It changed direction. So when it got to 2 kilometers from Medina, the lava flow changed direction and it started to go uphill. And Hamza Yusuf says that he spoke to a volcanologist or a geologist and he said that they couldn't explain it. They couldn't understand what had just happened here, why this happened. Now, this picture on your right, this is why I want to show you Google Earth. These are huge lava tracks that dot Saudi Arabia. So forget your Hollywood image of huge sand dunes and a person walking and falling and he runs out of water and then he dies. This, you're going to, in large parts of Arabia, you're going to see this, right? And one reason why I'm showing you this as well is if you know the Battle of the Trench, how is it possible that they could dig a ditch that nobody could cross? Right? So you've got Medina, right? And they're building a ditch here and nobody can cross it. But what about the rest of it? That's a secret we'll get to when we get there, inshallah. So this is probably the volcano. This is Hadrat Rahat. The lava plains, the lava tracks are called Hadra, right? And Hadrat Rahat was the volcano that caused that eruption. And look all around that volcano, you can see the lava, right? And this is what al-Qurtubi said. I want one of you to read. Someone, there's 2 readings. One, I want a gent to read now, and then I want a girl to read. So al-Qurtubi, somebody read, please.
I'll read it if you want.
Yep.
Al-Qurtubi said, a fire came out in the Ḥijāz in the noble city, and it started a great earthquake on the night of Wednesday, the 3rd of Jumada al-Awwal, 654 AH, and continued until the slaughter of Friday. Then it subsided and the fire appeared. From the sum total of this, the river is like a red and blue river, and it has a sound like the sound of thunder. It takes the rocks between its hands and gathered from that rubble which became like a great mountain, and the fire ended near Medina, and this fire was seen boiling like the boiling of the sea.
Right, so he's describing it in his own language. So the fire ended near Medina and it was boiling like this is basically lava, right? And he's talking about the sounds it takes the rocks between its hands and gathers from the rubble. He's talking about the explosion, right? This is how he's describing this volcano. Ibn Kathir also wrote about it. So can we have one of the girls reading, please?
Okay. Ibn Kathir said that fire remained in a state burning with flame, and it is like a great mountain at a height, and the city at a width from which pebbles emerge. It ascends to the sky and falls in it, and exits from it like the great mountain. Fire throws like thunder and remained like that for days, and stood for days, and then returned to throw stones behind and in front of it, until it built 2 mountains for her, and every day she had another great sound, night into a roar.
That's really scary, right? The language being used here is not how we would describe volcanic eruptions today, but obviously we can interpret this language, and he's talking about huge eruptions, and then it goes silent for a while, and then again a huge eruption. And each time an eruption happens, it's a sound like thunder, because the reason you have an eruption is you have pressure buildup, right? You have magma under the crust, and then you have pressure building up, and finally, once the pressure is released, you get that massive explosion that shoots pumice and rock and all of these minerals out in all directions. Imagine Pompeii. There's actually a beautiful video somebody did, AI-generated video of Pompeii, right? It's like a timeline of a whole day and a night of how in the distance the mountain, watch it. I should have linked it. Where you can see, the explosion, and then hours later you can see stuff falling, and then more stuff falling, and then the pyroclastic flow, and then the complete destruction of the town. Volcanoes are really scary things, right? You have lava flows, and sometimes lava travels up to 60 miles per hour. Then you get pyroclastic flows. Anything caught, pyroclastic flows are basically poisonous gases, dust, rock from the mountain, traveling down at speeds of 100 miles per hour. You can't outrun it. And it will just mummify everything in its path. This is what happened to Pompeii and the second city that was next to it. And you could see videos of pyroclastic flows. Thank God there wasn't a pyroclastic flow. It was just lava, and then the lava went uphill. Now imagine just 2 kilometers away from Medina. That's 1 mile away from the center of Medina. So for sure there were Hampsteads around this area that must have been affected. This was the last time this volcano erupted. There's a link there. I'm gonna give you those links for your reading material. You can read. These 2 links prove there's a hadith by Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam where he prophesies towards the end of time. He says the last hour would not come until fire emits from the earth of Ḥijāz, which would illuminate the necks of the camels of Busra. Now we have accounts of Bedouin hundreds of miles away saying night became day, right? Because don't forget, once you get, look at that lava, look at that light being emitted. And if it's a cloudy sky, that's being reflected off the clouds and back onto the earth again. And you can see at nighttime, you can see like it's day, right? When it snows, when it completely slows and the snow has settled on the ground and the sky is cloudy, you can literally see in midnight, if there's no street lights, you can look at your watch and you can read the time. I don't know the science behind it, but I've got a video of when it snowed last year. If you remember in England, last year, 1-2 years ago, it snowed. And at midnight, I'm looking out in the garden and it's like day. I can see everything, but it's completely cloudy. I shouldn't be able to do that, but I did. So likewise, people could see hundreds of miles away. Now, this is one of the prophecies towards the end of time. These 2 articles are very interesting. I don't want to go through it because I don't want to take about half an hour of everybody's time. So you lot can read them for yourselves. It's very interesting to read this. Here, look at those fingers that al-Qurtubi is talking about. That's the lava flows, right? So those are the huge lava flows, right? That literally make the land black. And look all around you. Look at that land, right? That's the mountains and the hills. That's Hijaz is mostly like that. So when you think of Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and the companions making hijrah, don't imagine 250-foot high dunes that you see in Hollywood. Imagine this. This is what they're walking through. And if you look at this picture carefully, just before the lava flows, you can see craters of other volcanoes. Right? The volcanoes in Arabia are not interspaced by huge distances. They're actually clustered together. Right? So there are 700 volcanoes between Rahat and Mecca, and 400 others in the Harat Khaybar area. So there's about 1,000 volcanoes just in the Hijaz area. Subhanallah. Right? And we'll see them. And they are some of the most beautiful volcanoes on earth, by the way. This is a volcano that's near Ta'if. It's 160 miles from Ta'if on the western edge of the Harat Kisp in Hijaz. The Harat Plateau contains many cones. This is 250 meters deep. So this volcanic crater is 250 meters deep and 2 kilometers in diameter. Subhanallah. And that's not very far from Mecca. Right? And the white area you can see in the middle is like the minerals, like phosphate or whatever minerals have been released. You can see those there. Now this is Harat Khaybar. So Khaybar is north of Medina. Now just count the volcanoes for yourself. Subhanallah. You can count probably more than a dozen, about 20 volcanoes here, right? And look at the one on the right-hand side. That volcano that erupted, look at the lava flow, right? And that lava flow, this volcano erupted just after the passing of Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam passed away in 630 AD. This volcano happened 20 years after. This happened in the time of the Khulfa Rashidun. Right? Now, the complete entire lava flow, it doesn't mean that all of that happened. You know, we're probably looking at the darkest part in the center. That's the remnant of the explosion that happened in Harat Khaybar in the time of the Khulfa Rashidun. 650, that would have been 20 years afterwards, that would have been the Caliphate of Umar. Because he lasted 12 years, 2 years Abu Bakr, 8 years Umar. I don't know. Either Umar, I forgot my timeline, Umar or Uthman. Right? And this covers an area of 12,000 square kilometers. Right? So this is what the companions knew. This is the kind of stuff they were navigating when they were traveling the trade routes. Not 250-foot high sand dunes. No. This is what they had to traverse. And this is what they were familiar with. This is Jabal Abiyat. This is one of the volcanoes near Medina, right? And it's considered a beautiful volcano. There's beautiful pictures of it on the internet. This is very close to Medina, by the way, Jabal Abiyat. And then Jabal Bayda, another very beautiful volcano, right? And it's a stunning volcano. And look all around you, right? You can see the cones of other volcanoes. And you can see the lava, the black lava, the Harra fields. This is Harat Rahat. So this was in the vicinity of the volcano that hit Medina. Was it this one? I don't know. But this is one of the volcanoes. And it's the same volcano actually. Or I think it's two different volcanoes. But when I was downloading it, I'm sure it gave the same name. One of them has the lava field. So you can see the lava field spreading quite far and wide, and the other one you don't see the lava field, so maybe it's a different one, but in the distance you can see the lava field. More information on Harra Plains, I really highly recommend, and I really want you, and I will be very upset with you if you do not watch this website Inside Saudi. These two YouTube videos came from the link from this website. He's somebody who's lived in Saudi. He's a foreigner. He's a teacher. He's lived there for like 20 years, I think. And he's done some amazing work, right? Yani, it saved me so much time. Otherwise, I love this subject and I could have put so much more information up for yourselves and it would have become 4 hours again. So just watch his videos, what he's done, how he's mapped them. He showed them in great detail. He's zoomed in. And he will teach you amazing things about those volcanoes. So I highly recommend. Like I said, if you want the map of Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's time, this is essential reading. If you want to make a map in your own head that doesn't represent the map of Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, then don't watch these videos. But if you want the map of Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam in your head, by God, you have to watch these two videos, and you have to study this website, all of it, all of it. Right, here's a picture of another volcano. Now, one of the most amazing things in Saudi Arabia is from north to south, we have volcanoes pockmarking Saudi Arabia, Arabian Peninsula in a line, right? So look at that. Where else in the world would you get volcanoes that are literally in a line like this? And look on your left, you can see the lava fields. All around you, you can see the lava fields. And these are giant volcanoes, by the way. Here's another picture of volcanoes with the lava fields. On your right-hand side and on your left-hand side, you can see the Harra fields again. On the top left-hand side, you can see the fields again. Jabal Qadr Stratu volcano. This is near Medina. This is, if you fly over Medina next time, look out the window. Instead of looking at TV on your screen, actually look out the window, you'd see these volcanoes. Look at this volcano, look in the distance, you'll see the lava fields. So the Hadrat Plain. Now, I think I took this from that guy's website. I'm not sure. But if we look on the left here, you can see the Hadra fields. And you can see that Medina has a large share of them. So the area around Medina city, there's huge lava fields. Yemen has them in the north, in Sham, in the area of, that would be Jordan, and that would be Jordan, yeah, or probably parts of Syria as well, has them above the Nafud desert. But we're concerned with the ones around Medina and Khaybar, because that's where the cluster of volcanoes are. And if you look at the legend on the left, it actually gives you the outline of the African Arabian swell. I don't know what that means. I think it's an area encircled by volcanoes or something. The green is where we had the eruption in 640 AD. And then obviously the yellow is the eruption in 1256. If you look on the right-hand side now, look at the volcanoes, cone 1, cone 2, cone 4, right? Look at the lava tubes, look at the lava pond, the lava, and then look where Medina is, just on the edge of that. Literally, this is the topography of Medina, right? So not the 250 high foot desert dunes. This is what the companions had to walk through. And it doesn't make for easy walking. It doesn't make for easy camel riding. It doesn't make for easy horse riding. In fact, horses can't even ride through here, right? That's one of the secrets of why they just built the trench and nothing else to protect Medina. Next time you're traveling to Saudi Arabia from Mecca to Medina, look out of the window on your coach and you will see the black stones, right? You will see all of this. Along the whole route, you will see this. Right, so this is Battle of the Trench. So you can see Jabal Ahad, Quraysh with their 10,000 army. Ghatfan was with them, and Qaba'il al-Ukhra, so and other tribes. And then the Muslimun were 3,000. And that's where they built Khandak, the trench. They built a defensive ditch from one Harra to the other Harra. And in between was the Hampsteads of Medina. Remember we said Medina wasn't a city like other cities at that time. It was an open area with different tribes and villages just spread out over a large area. So now you know why. Now you know why they just built one ditch, right? Because on all three sides, it's impossible, because no camel and no horse can traverse those lava fields. Why? Because they're sharp rocks. And I'll show you pictures of them, inshallah, when the time comes. And there's a mountain on the south. And the tiny gaps you can see, where they could have come from the southeast, they are densely populated areas of palm groves, right? Date palms. And those date palms are so densely populated that your cavalry cannot go through there. There are ditches, water ditches, because you need water ditches to give water to these places, right? So cavalry cannot go through there. Foot soldiers need to march, and they're easy picking for Muslim archers and Muslims waiting in the thickets, right? So now you know the secret of why it was just a ditch. I don't know if anybody else is going to teach it to you like that. Alhamdulillah, now you know the secret. And now you know the reason why I told you the topography of Arabia, and I focus so much on the Harra plains and the volcanoes, right? So every lesson, no matter how boring it seems to you, I told you there's a penny drop moment, right? And there's reasons why I teach it, and it'll all come together and make you people in future, inshallah, that will be able to teach the Seerah in this elevated manner that encompasses all of the sciences together to give you a more holistic picture, right? Now you can imagine the Rasul standing there, the ditch, right? Don't forget, we had Ali on one side, we had famous Quraysh on the other side trying to go over. Khalid ibn Walid tried to jump over and he couldn't. And the women folk were behind in Mecca, protected. You could imagine what Rasulullah was thinking. You can imagine now what the companions were thinking. This was the scene that they were facing, right? Before, if you studied the Battle of the Trench, you're just creating this picture in the middle of space with no context, with nothing. Now, alhamdulillah, you've got a context, and you're going to get a better one when we discuss the battles. And discussing the battles of Rasulullah is a complete science in itself. So I'm going to teach it as a science, not as just Seerah, as a science of Rasulullah as a general, as somebody who commanded armies, and his wisdom and his genius and his brilliance and intelligence as someone who was a soldier on the battlefield. Inshallah, we will see that also. Right, now moving on to the mountains. So Saudi Arabia also has the Arabian Peninsula, sorry, not Saudi Arabia. The Arabian Peninsula also has mountains, and it has a lot of mountains. I told you the eastern seaboard is complete mountains. And I lived in Jazan, and Abha. I lived in the mountains, very difficult living, and I lived in Jazan next to Abha. The mountains, and I can tell you it's not easy living. Some are dry and some are absolutely beautiful and green, right? So a large part of where human civilization lives, if you look at a nighttime picture, like you get those pictures of the globe where you have like where people inhabit. So if you look at Europe, it's very lit at nighttime because of the light pollution. If you look at parts of Africa and India, it's just black. Afghanistan, almost black. Maybe a few lights in Kabul, that's it. If you look at Arabia, it's mostly black. But if you look at the corridor, the Tihama corridor, from north to south, there's a lot of population there. The largest population is Riyadh, which has 8 million people. Surprising. That's the same as London. Jeddah, I think, has 4 million, and then, or 2 million, 2 to 4 million, and then every other city like Medina, Mecca have less, like 2 million and less. The population isn't great, and a lot of these towns exist, like Gunfada and Asir, moving up this corridor, and you will see it lit a lot because there's a lot of human population there, right? So people do live there. So this is what this is what they see when they see Arabia. This is what they see every day. Jabal Sauda, which is the highest range in Saudi Arabia today, the highest out of all of them is Nabi Shu'aib in Yemen, but in Saudi Arabia it would be Jabal Sauda, which is 3,000 feet above sea level. It's very green in the summer, you'll see it. And this is Mount Ahad. So Ahad also, Medina is surrounded by mountains, right? So this is what the companions see. So you want to imagine what the companions saw when they opened their eyes? This is what the companions were seeing, right? Not sand dunes. This is what the companions were seeing, right? We're still talking about mountains, but I need to talk about the Ma'rib Dam, because a lot of the greenery was artificially created due to the Ma'rib Dam. When we talk about the civilizations that came before the Muslims, before Islam came, when we talk about Jahiliyyah and pre-Islamic Arabia, we're going to mention more about this. Just a quick brief mention of it now. The medieval Arab geographer Yaqut al-Hamawi described it thus: it is between three mountains, and the floodwaters all flow to one location, and because of that, the water only discharges in one direction, and the ancients blocked that place with hard rocks and lead. The water from springs gathers there, as well as floodwater collecting behind the dam like a sea. Whenever they wanted to, they could irrigate their crops from it by just letting out however much water they needed from sluice gates. Once they had used enough, they would close the gates again as they pleased. This is mentioned in the Quran. This dam is mentioned in the Quran, and it was because of this dam that we had those great civilizations in the south. The rainwater from the mountains, if you don't harness it, it flows away, right? It flows away, as we'll see, as you can see in videos online. I tried to save one. I did save one. Maybe I'll show it, maybe I won't. But you get the huge flooding. That's because the water doesn't go anywhere. It rains. When it rains so fast and so hard that the earth doesn't have time to absorb the water. So the water, it's called surface runoff. It just runs. That's why you have dry wadis. They call them wadis, dry riverbeds in Arabia. The water just flows away, right? And it creates floods when it hits the cities because they never planned drainage systems into the cities. So that's the reason why you get these huge floods. And I was caught in one in my time there in Jeddah. The car actually lifted, and I was rescued by climbing from one car into another car quickly before it became dangerous. And that was an experience, alhamdulillah. So just a brief mention about the Ma'rib Dam. Now, this is Saudi Arabia. Did you ever imagine, this is not, actually this is Yemen, but parts of Saudi are like this. Did you actually imagine that Arabia of Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam could look like this? Yes or no, people? Answer?
No.
Right.
No.
There are many, many, many places that look like this in Saudi Arabia, and I've seen them, right? This is the city of Ib. Ib is in Yemen, and Ib is similar to the word Ab, and Ab is the Persian word for water. And it's interesting, I joined the link myself because the Persians did hold sway there for a little while. In the time, just before the time of Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, they ousted the Aksumites and they held sway for a very short while. So does this word Ib come from Ab? Obviously, water makes it green, whether it's the dam of Ma'rib or whether it's the monsoon rains, but it's green and it's to do with water, so they call it Ib. Now, this is a real city in Yemen. That's Ib again. This is Abha. Abha was not far from where I lived. I used to visit Abha, and Jabal Sauda, the highest peak in Saudi Arabia, is in Abha, 3,000 feet up. And it was cloudy, it was rainy, it was foggy, it was stunning, it was beautiful, right? This is Arabia. This is Saudi Arabia. This on your left is Saudi Arabia. This is when the trees throw off their flowers. And on your right, that garden could be a garden in England. That could be a garden anywhere. Yet that is in Saudi Arabia. And that's not an artificial created garden that you see in Dubai or in Riyadh or some place like that. No, this is nature. This is how it comes. This is how it is. Right? So this is the Arabia of your Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Look at that, Abha. That's another garden and if you want to check more pictures out, look, I think the website address is given on the bottom as well. This is an area in Abha. There's a mountain there called the Green Mountain, right? It's green, and they've also got green lighting going all the way around it as well. So it looks very nice at nighttime. This is in Abha, and I visited Abha. These are more pictures of Abha. So water, cascading waterfalls. You have terraced fields, and terracing is a very, very old technique. The oldest terrace fields are rice paddies in China, thousands of years old, still being used. You only have terraced fields where you have a lot of water. So that shows you that the southern part of Saudi Arabia and Yemen has a lot of water where they can create terraced fields to do their farming. Because terracing, you do that on the edge of mountains, right? Because otherwise you get water running off. So then you need to create the artificial fields and then dam them in so the water stays. Rice, especially rice, you need to do that for, because rice needs it needs to be sunk in water. This is Taif, right? Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, we know that when he lost protection in the year of sorrow, it's called the year of sorrow. We've named it the year of sorrow. The companions didn't know it as the year of sorrow. In the year of sorrow, where Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's wife passed away, his uncle passed away, and he lost all protection, he went to Taif to see if he could convert them and gain some protection along the way as well. I always wondered when I was living in Baha, in Abha, no, in Baha. From Baha, it's 6 hours down the mountain to Mecca. In a straight line, it would be much easier because it's Baha, Taif, and Mecca. But obviously, it's mountains, so you're going round and round and round and round. When I got to Taif, I always wondered, where is the ancient road that people would walk up to go to Taif? I always wondered where it was. Did the modern Arabs preserve it? I doubt they didn't preserve anything. The Saud family didn't preserve anything. Now there's the beginning of a drive where they're starting to do these things, but since the Wahhabi movement, it's just been destruction, destruction, destruction. Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam walked from Mecca through those same mountains, and we all know the mountains outside Mecca. All of you have been Umrah and you know the mountains outside Mecca. He walked through those sharp, difficult mountains and climbed the mountains until he got to Taif, right? If it was the hot season, it wouldn't have been as green as this. Possibly in the cold season, I don't know. I mean, how does it work? When I was there, the rainy season was in spring and it became green. Yeah. So if it was spring, it would have been like this. In the hot season, it becomes dry again, and in the cold season, it stays green as well. So did the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam see this? Probably, probably not. Did he see this actual image? Probably, probably not. Did he see this greenery on the way? That's easy to work out. Just find out which month he went into. If he went in the months where there's greenery, then by God, he saw this greenery. He saw this greenery. This is not an English rose garden where you've got English rose bushes. This is the kind of greenery that grows in Arabia, and this is what your blessed Prophet ﷺ saw, right? This is Dofa. This is in Oman. That's the southern end of the al-Khālī desert. So where the desert ends, the greenery starts. And this is mentioned in Ḥijāz's book, which I'm going to give you as reading material when we get to that particular subject. That doesn't look like Arabia, but that's Arabia. This also does not look like Arabia, but this is Arabia. This is the Arabian Peninsula. And this is not a one-off, by the way, that you're thinking, oh, this is just a tiny place. No, we're talking like hundreds of square kilometers that look like this. This is Wadi Darbat in the southern peninsula. I think this is Oman. No, it's in Saudi Arabia or Oman. This is Wadi Darbat again. This is Wadi al-Burdani, which is considered the most beautiful wadi in Saudi Arabia. Wadi Burdani again. Wadi Burdani. Wadi Burdani. And they even have cattle grazing. Wasn't Saudi Arabia supposed to be a place of 250 high sand dunes with camels? Where did these cattle come from? They had cattle. And the desert blooms. When it rains, the desert blooms because we have seeds in the desert that lie dormant for sometimes decades. And they only have a very small time to bloom. So when it rains, within days, they're flowering, giving off their pollen, and they've completed their life cycle. This is Wadi Lajab. Wadi Lajab was a place near Jazan. I drove to this place. I destroyed my car en route because it was mountains, and my car, even though it was a very powerful American Chevy, the engine couldn't cope. So I just about managed to get down, and I had to scrap that car. I was going to drive to Riyadh and sell it in Riyadh, but I ended up scrapping it. It got shipped to Riyadh, and then I sold it for like 2,000 Riyal, which was like 300, 400 pounds or something like that, the scrap. Even though it was still running, but the engine had gone. Wadi Lajab is a place, they say, in Jazan that jinns live. And Wadi Lajab, when I was living in Saudi Arabia, one of the teachers I was working with, his wife was doing a PhD study on this particular area. And she actually lived out there. So they drove into Jazan like 1 or 2 hours every day. They lived out in the sticks. And she was doing research on specific tribes. And we're going to mention those tribes in succeeding lectures. They are not like the tribes in the north. Like I told you, there's a difference in what you know to be Saudis and what other Saudis are that are also Saudis, but that are not portrayed in the media. Those tribes apparently only became Muslim after the advent of aeroplanes. Those tribes were isolated tribes, right? So they never came down from the mountain and nobody went up to see if there were people there. Nobody knew about them and no da'wah ever happened. And I heard the story that it was only after the first aeroplanes flew over there that they realized that there are villages and people living up here. So they sent da'is up to give them da'wah and convert them. And I heard stories of people saying that their grandfathers, when they were young, their grandfathers were not Muslim. And carrying on from the story of this being a place of jinn, I also heard that a lot of witchcraft and stuff was practiced in this area. And to this day, if you want to know a sahir or a kahin, probably a sahir more than a kahin, you look at his legs, because what they would do as part of their rituals of initiation into the magic was they would slit their thigh. So they would slit their thigh and then wrap a stick around it and roll their skin down all the way, exposing their muscles to the bottom, right? So that would destroy their skin basically, and then they would be scarred for life if they survived. And people like the old people, some of them they said still had that, and that would identify them as a magician. This place is absolutely stunning, right? And alhamdulillah, I visited this place. And to get there, by the way, you need to go through too high. Like this is nothing really. It's like very, very high walls, like incredibly high. It's like the mountain literally cleft asunder, and there's a road just wide enough for like 3 or 4 lanes, right? And it's a dirt track, but imagine like a 3 or 4 lane dirt track, and it winds through very, very high mountains, and then you get to Wadi Lajab, and that same cleft in the mountains carries on into Africa. So you see it in Africa. So this is the moving of the tectonic plates, right? So this is that cleft in the mountains, and when you get to the other side, you get to this absolutely amazing, beautiful place, right? And I tried to find better pictures, but I didn't have time. You can, next time you go to Jazan, you can visit this place. It's really, really stunning and beautiful. Also, rain in Arabia. I want everybody to go to that link. There's a link there. I want everybody to visit that link. Arabia floods. People always assume that it's a dry desert. If you read the poetry of Imrul Qais, he has descriptions of rain and clouds that are exactly the same as rain clouds that you see today, right? And you're thinking, subhanallah, Imrul Qais, you're looking at the same cloud. I'm looking at the same clouds you're describing, which you described like 1800 years ago or 2000 years ago. When it rains, it really rains. So these are ancient pictures because you can see the old well of Zamzam and you can see the old architecture of the old mosque, and you can see that it's completely flooded. Why? Because Medina sits at the bottom of a valley, and all around it are mountains, right? And the well of Zamzam actually starts way off in those huge mountains I told you about. So like tens of miles away in the very high mountains, from all over the mountains, not just one mountain, everywhere, right? When it rains, the rainwater filters into the bedrock and it makes its way down through the strata, and it comes up as Zamzam, right? So the origin is very, very, very far away. And they did a test and they pumped huge volumes of water out. And they found out that no matter how many tens of thousands of gallons they pumped out a minute or whatever it was, it would fill. That means there's a lot of reserve water in the bedrock. There's a lot of underground, what's the name of those underground reservoirs? There's a lot of water there, alhamdulillah. And that's why Zamzam never goes dry. There was a time when it was polluted by an extreme Shia group. That's a story for another time. They buried dead bodies in it and polluted it, and they created a massacre and stole the black stone for 22 years and took it back to their capital, which was in Bahrain and Shirkiya. But that's a different story. They are known as the slipped my mind. But Zamzam has never run dry. There's other wells, and each well belonged to specific people. When we talk about Mecca, inshallah, we'll identify those wells. But the water would come from far. They'd have to go far to bring the water in. So when Zamzam sprang up, it was a miracle because right next to the Kaaba, Zamzam sprang up and people had water to drink. But when it floods, you can see it floods bad. So go to this link and have a look at the pictures. And there's a story, a very interesting story of a man. He's seen in one of the pictures as a boy swimming. And in that same picture, if you look at this picture, by the way, you can see the door of the Kaaba and the water is up to the door. So you can see people sitting at the door of the Kaaba with their feet in the water. That means the water is head height. So if you want to do tawaf, you have to do 7 circuits of swimming. That's the only, you can't do tawaf. Either you wait until the water goes down, or if you're a swimmer, you swim. So people can say, yeah, we walked around the Kaaba. People can say, yeah, we crawled. People can say, yeah, the crowds, we just about managed to do it. Some people can say, yeah, we did the rami, we managed to run as well. Some people can say, yeah, we did it on camel, we did it on donkey, we did it on horse, we did it very close, we did it very far. But how lucky and rare are the people that say we swam 7 circuits, literally swam, because your feet are not touching the ground. And if you go to this link I told you about, they identify a boy you can see swimming as an old man today, and he gives you his account of what he witnessed when he was swimming around the Kaaba. This is Najran. Najran is an old Christian city in the south. Jazan, I was in Jazan. The next city on the way to Yemen past me, major city, was Najran. Najran's famous. Why? Because for 2 reasons. One of them is a Christian city, so Christians came up from there to speak with Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And also the story of the trench, the Jewish king that burnt the Christians, it was centered around Yemen, Najran kind of an area. We'll identify it. We'll try to identify accurately, inshallah, when we get to that story in the Seerah. It's pre-Seerah, actually, so we will look at it soon, inshallah. This is Najran. Again, this is Najran. Look how beautiful and green Najran is. This is people farming in Najran. And in the distance, you can see it's green. Jabal FIFA, whenever they used to say FIFA, I used to think of FIFA World Cup. They would actually say FIFA, right? Jabal FIFA, I had students that would come, they would drive down from the mountain into Jazan to study every day, right? And Jabal FIFA is beautiful, it's green. A lot of gut. If you know the Somalians, they chew qat, right? In the Khaliji dialects, it's the qaf becomes ga, they call it gut. You will see, if you watch any video of Yemeni videos on YouTube, you'll see them like this. They keep it in their mouth. And a lot of it is grown in these areas. The government turns a blind eye to it. It's part of their culture. Even the women chew it, right? And it's famous because it's famous in Yemen, it's famous in Southern Arabia, it's famous in Somalia, famous in Ethiopia. And in England, up to recently, they would have cut shops where you would go into these Somalian kind of coffee shops, and all they had was coffee and cut, nothing else. They would serve nothing else. And they'd have a big TV with football playing on it. And when the Somalians first came to England in 95, I was a young guy of 19. Now you know my age, alhamdulillah. I was 19, and there's a Somalian, he was kind of their bigwig, and I went to his house to pick up something that he had of mine. He was an older man, much older compared to me. I was a teenager, and I saw people sitting in like a majlis, right? So he was sitting at the head. They had like when you put a sufra on the floor, and like where people are going to eat, like you have in the mosques. And all I saw was like bushes of cut in front of everybody. And I didn't know what it was at that time. And that's all they were doing, chewing, right? So these mountains, they grow this. The government turns a blind eye and says, these people basically also watch the route, the smuggling route from Yemen also. So weapons come through, drugs come through. So the government kind of says, well, keep an eye on the roads and everything, and do what you do what you've done for centuries, which is take your cut. It's very expensive, right? In England, I remember it used to cost you £10 to buy a bush this big. In Saudi Arabia, it's more expensive because it's illegal. In these areas, it's free. And my students used to cross the border and go into Yemen to get it because I was very close to the Yemenis border, and it was virtually almost free there back then. So you can see again terracing. Look at the terraces on the mountainside. That means there's so much rain there that they can farm, right? And that's how it is all the time. Subhanallah, right? Look at those terraced slopes. The house architecture in the south is very different compared to northern architecture. Maybe we'll have a look at that as well. I wanted to get a good picture, but I don't think this represents exactly what I was looking for. In the south, they build houses like fortresses. They are multi-story, 3, 4, 5, 6. If you look at pictures of Sana'a, Sana'a is an absolutely beautiful city to look at. Now, the houses, they're built like this, and if you look at the outer wall of the house, not these particular houses, but they look like this, but if you look at the outer walls, you'll see the bricks, you'll see tiles. So it's like they're built at an angle. So it's like this, like this, like this, like this. Why? Because it rained so much there that they wanted the rainwater to fall off their building and not seep into, because they're built from stone, right? Stone, stone, stone. So it would seep into the building. So they wanted it to fall off. So they would only do that because it would rain a lot. So even their architecture reflects where they live. Then if we look at the extreme other end of Saudi Arabia, this is al-Hijr. So this is now on the route, on the trade routes, going to, this is going towards Busra. So you're heading towards Syria now. So this is part of the old Nabatean Empire. So you have Petra. Petra is the most famous city, but if you look at the Nabatean Empire, it actually went as far as these areas. So these areas come under what we know as the area of Ad and Thamud. Muslims are not really supposed to visit these areas. There's a warning against visiting these areas. Saudi Arabia has now started tourism in these areas. They've built tourist resorts there. This is one of, like, there are many, many secrets in Saudi Arabia that the world doesn't know about. And some of them we'll discuss, some of them it's none of our business because it's a Sīrah course. The only reason there's secrets is because Saudi Arabia was not concerned with tourism. Other countries open up and they have tourism. Saudi Arabia has an incredible amount of history, an incredible amount of data that's useful to us as historians. And up till now, we didn't know it existed, or we knew it existed, but nobody could visit it. So this is one of those places. And look at the desert there now. So the desert opens up. So what happens is that you leave the lava fields behind. You leave the green groves of like the palm trees, and then the desert opens up, and then the green groves start again. So this is the desert that Rasulullah would have walked past. The companions would have walked past on their way to Mecca. And we have a hadith of Rasulullah that they were passing past this area, and he says, let's pass here quickly. Don't stop here, because we don't want to stop in a place where Allah's punishment had descended. Look how absolutely stunning this is, right? This is the northern part of Arabia, where the Nabateans and Thamud and Ad were, is dotted with these kind of buildings and this kind of a landscape. This is not just one you're looking at. There's tens and probably even hundreds of them, right? We're going to look at more pictures when we talk about this civilization, inshallah, in succeeding lectures. This is enough for now, just to show you the landscape of Arabia in the north. Then we have the Red Sea. Obviously, Arabia is surrounded on 3 sides by ocean. the Red Sea in its north has been developed. So we have Haggadah, we have Sharm el-Sheikh. Sharm el-Sheikh was built by the Egyptians, by the Jews, by the way, when they were there, no, it was Aqaba. So Aqaba or Aqaba was built, I think it was Sharm el-Sheikh was built by the Jews because they controlled Sinai. So the time they controlled it, they built the beginnings of the resort, and then it was completed and added to by the Egyptians. That's all developed. But the rest of the Red Sea, from the top all the way down to Yemen, untouched because the Saudis were not concerned. Now, I happen to live in Jazan, which was on the Red Sea, worst place to live because it's Tihama. And we have pristine coral and islands, Khorasan Islands. And we traveled to those islands, and those islands, there was an Ottoman fort there, and the Germans had used it during the Second World War because they were monitoring something. But it's pristine. So if you want to do pristine Red Sea diving that very few people on earth have ever been to, go there. Go to those places and you can do it there. Also, it gets very, very, very cold in Saudi Arabia. First of all, let's talk about Jeddah, right? Jeddah isn't a cold city. In the winter, the temperature it's got cold. You get anomalies. It can get very cold, but on average in winter, it'll drop to 20, it'll drop to 18. Now in England, 20 degrees is our average summer weather. 22 is considered hot, 24 is hot. Forget the global warming where we get 27, 28, 29. That's extreme for us. And we know that we start to die when it hits 27. On average, we're looking at 22, 23, and that's a nice summer for us. 20, if you want to give it an average mean. 20 in Jeddah, we would feel cold. Literally, we would feel cold. Why? Because our bodies would acclimatize to the heat. So the heat of 40 degrees, 45, our bodies would get used to. So 20 was cold, and we would literally wear cardigans. We would wear hoodies in 20 degrees because we would feel cold. But that's Jeddah. If you go to Riyadh has been known to reach 2 degrees. If you go to Riyadh in the winter, certainly you need a coat, right? You cannot survive without a coat. It's cold. Al-Baha, when I was there, was freezing. The Arabs used to wear farwas, long, real fur. You get fake ones that are very cheap. I bought them, but the real ones are made from soof, from wool. They're very expensive. Every student would wear them, right? And you'll see pictures of like Bedouin Arabs completely wearing the farwas. Why? Because it was really cold. It was 4 degrees when I was there, and literally it was so cold, like 4 degrees. It's just above zero. In Saudi Arabia, 4 degrees. Can you believe? Riyadh has gone down to 2 degrees. This is snow you're looking at in the desert. In the northern deserts, it's been known to snow. And I remember, because you're in the mountains, right? So the clouds are very close to you. The clouds were coming into our kitchen. Our kitchen was cloudy. I'm not going to say foggy. I'm going to say cloudy because our kitchen was cloudy. There was clouds in our kitchen. No lie, right? And if you've ever done the bus journey from Mecca to Medina, you'll see that when you get to Medina, you need a jacket. If you know your regions, you know that when you set off on your journey in the winter from Jeddah, in Jeddah, you don't need a jacket because you're by the Red Sea, the sea's warm, you don't get cold. 20 degrees, you're okay. As you start to move north, you get cold. So if you're sensible, you're going to take a jacket with you because when you get to Medina and you get off, it's cold, right? Now, in the Sīrah, we come across one of the battles where the companions were freezing, right? When you travel from Medina onwards, Al-Ula, Tabuk, oh my God, we're talking freezing now. Now your scarves come out. This is what comes out, what they're wearing here, right? And remember I said to you, Rasulullah traveled to Busra, right? Abu Talib took him to Sham, and the companions, Umar went as well. They felt cold, right? No 250 degrees, 250 foot high dunes. We're talking about freezing weather. The companions felt freezing weather. Rasulullah must have felt the cold of northern Arabia. When we got to the border of Jordan, it was absolutely freezing. And in the winter, you will see snow there. And this is snow in the desert. Baghdad has been known to have snow, right? Syria, here's the thing. So Riyadh is cold for many months of the year. Abha is very cold in winter. Syria, Amman, they regularly have snow. I've seen snow myself in Amman, right? And a lot of snow you can see in Amman. Just YouTube Amman in the winter and it snows more than England. Syria snows. When we had the earthquake a few years ago, we had the earthquake, was it last year? We had the earthquake in Turkey, and we all saw the images of people stuck in buildings and freezing weather in Turkey, right? Less so people knew that Idlib also suffered a lot. Idlib is under the control of an entity that's at war with the Syrian regime, so it's independent. It's completely cut off from the rest of Syria at the moment. It's the only independent area left in Syria. The government hasn't got enough money to fight those people at the moment. And Turkey, again, because if they fight, then those people move towards Turkey, and Turkey doesn't want that. So there's a lot of politics going on. The earthquake also hit that area. And those people didn't get the aid that the world gave to Turkey, right? And I checked the temperature during those days. It was -2. So those people were trapped in those buildings in Syria in -2. And England, very rarely, London gets to 0, right? So every year, Syria, just do this test yourself. Wait till November, wait till December, wait till January. Check your temperature in England every day and check Jerusalem, check Syria, check Turkey, and check Jordan. You'll find every day those places I named, apart from probably Jerusalem, are going to be colder than your London. And you'll have snow there. There's pictures of Masjid al-Aqsa covered in snow. Jerusalem has had snow. Baghdad had snow a few years ago. This century, it snowed 2 times in Baghdad. Right, Jazan and the south, it's near the equator, so it stays hot. So in Jazan, it's by the Red Sea, it's quite south. There's only two weathers, hot and hotter. So you have hot and hotter. There's no hot, cold. It's either hot. In the summer, in the winter, it's about 30. In the summer, it's 45. Very humid all year round because it's very close to it's on the Red Sea, and it's very close to the equator. So at 12 o'clock, the shadows are very, very small. So if you're looking at like a lamppost or you're looking at a car at 12 o'clock, you're not going to see a shadow. It's going to be like those camels that you saw because it's very close to the equator. So you're not really going to get a shadow. You know, you need to move longitudinally or latitudinally up or down for shadows to appear. Khorasan Islands, these are the islands I told you about off the coast of the Red Sea where the Ottoman fort was untouched. I spent one night there, alhamdulillah. Very lucky to have spent time there. The whole island, by the way, is coral. Right? That black you can see is coral, untouched coral. And a lot of the islands are completely made of coral. That's not rock, it's coral. And that beach, we were the only people on that beach the whole night and the whole day even. So that's the end of today's lecture, but I want to show you one last thing as I said I was going to show. Is everybody still with me? Can you hear me, everybody?
Yes.
Yes.
Right, okay, so this is Saudi Arabia. So I'm going to zoom in. Right, so here are the mountains here. Here are the mountains on the left-hand side. Right, now I'm just going to, this is Abha. This is Abha here. So these are the mountains of Abha I told you about. Right, Jazan, this is Jazan. Right, this is where I used to live. And it's by the Red Sea. These are the Khorasan Islands. These are the Khorasan Islands, untouched. Nobody goes there. You're thinking, here's the rift. So here's the rift here, where the land split, and here is the Rift Valley under the ocean. Now you're thinking, this is Eritrea. This is Djibouti. Many people from Eritrea and Djibouti work in Saudi Arabia. So why don't they smuggle oil? I actually thought I thought, what's stopping me from Jazan? This is where I was. What's stopping me hiring a boat, getting a few barrels of oil, and taking it across and selling it here? That's because these areas here are desert and they're bandit areas. So you will not make it into town. And on the way, you get coast guards and you'd be stopped anyway. And if we look here, here's Egypt, here's Port Sudan in Egypt, and across from Egypt, you have Mecca. Here's Taif, and Mecca is, obviously, Mecca would be, here's Mecca. It's literally across from Egypt, right? So that's why when they have the boats, when they do Hajj, they just cross from here to here. But what I want to show you is, can you see the mountains here, right? Now, let's look at what's interesting. There's a lava track. Now, imagine having to cross this. You can't cross this. Right? Here's another one. Here's another one. Actually, this is a mountain. Yeah, this is... Okay, it's done something. How do I get back? Right, I want to just change the thingy. How do I do this? Sorry, I might have to just... Okay, cool. Right, let me just Google Earth again. How do I get out of this particular shot? Right, 3D, okay. So if we're moving towards like Riyadh and Central Arabia now, right? So you can see the mountains. This is Mecca province. We're still, I don't know how this Mecca, yeah, in Mecca. Right, so this is al-Khālī. Look, these are the sand dunes. These are the massive sand dunes that we talked about, right? So there's no cities, there's no landmarks, there's nothing here. People do not live here. Probably some crazy Bedouins who probably know a few secret watering holes live here. Otherwise, nobody lives here. But let me show you the Harra plains of Medina. So this is Medina. All around Medina, look at these lava plains. Huge lava plains. Unpassable, untraversable lava plains. I'm trying to find you the mount. Here's a volcano, look. There's a volcano. Here's another one. Right, look at the lava tracks. So they hit the city. The city has actually grown up to them now, right? So here's the road, and then they actually passes the road. Look, there's a car parked on the corner of a lava. I want to show you. So look, see, can you see the lava trails, right? So when the mountain blew, this is the lava. I want to show you actual volcanoes, volcano crater. Here's a volcano. Temporary closed. So even if we go here again, look, there's more. Here's a volcano. Here's another volcano. Here's another volcano. Here's another volcano, and here's lava tracks. All the black is basically lava tracks. Here's another volcano. Here's another one. So you can play about with this for yourself, by the way, right? And you'll see, I mean, it's amazing. Khail province. So this is sand, but the sand is like this. It's different than al-Khālī, right? So it's dotted with stones and little hills. So it's not easy to traverse. And the route that Rasulullah would have taken would have been from Mecca to Medina, right? Then there's a few routes, but it passed Khaybar. Now this is where the war with the Jewish tribe happened, right? So from Medina they had to march to Khaybar, right? And Khaybar has fortresses, which we'll look at, but there's a massive volcano near Khaybar as well. The pictures that I showed you of this volcano that exploded in 650, right? And this is what they've got to walk through. The companions can only walk through these areas where they are like, I don't know what they are. You can't see what they are from here, right? And then they went north. So they went to al-Ula, right? This is, you can see here now the greenery. Here, look, you can see. There's your greenery. Harrat viewpoint. So you can go to the, if I click it, a picture will come up. I don't want to, but this is the Harra plains. Again, look, the volcanic lava plains, right? But you can see the greenery now. And here, does anybody know what this is? Or have any of you seen this when you're flying over Arabia? Have any of you
Something
seen
to
this?
do with water distillation or something.
Yeah. So what it is these are artificial fields they've created. So what they do is they have like a little machine here with water, and this is a pipe. This is a pipe, and at the end they have a wheel of a truck, and it basically, the pipe has holes that water, and it just goes round and round, and the whole area becomes green. This is how they farm, right? So this is how they farm in Arabia. You'll see huge areas that do that. So let's move on towards, here's Tabuk. Tabuk, here again, look, here's the farming. So this is a dry field, and this is a field that they're farming. Again, you've got the mountains and hills. Again, look, you've got, okay, I don't know what this is. Is it green area, or it's a marshland? I think it's a wet, yeah, it's probably a green area. And then obviously they would go up. Where is that famous battle that happened? The Battle of Muta is somewhere here as well, right? But you can play about with this yourself, right? You can play about with this yourself and try to find the volcanoes, and it's absolutely amazing what you'll come across. So this is what I wanted to show you. So play about with Google Earth and get an idea of this place. So that was it for today's lesson. Thank you very much for attending. Any questions? Any questions?
No.
Yeah, nobody has any questions? All right, thank you so much. I'm going to put up reading material, the links and everything I'm going to put up, so I want everybody to read and have a look at them. It will broaden your understanding of exactly what you've seen today. And I think, alhamdulillah, we now have a better picture of what Arabia is like, to know that what Rasulullah would have seen. I'm just trying to find the greenery here. There, can you see that?
Yeah.
In the south, it's green, right? So Dhofar here, look, here. Actually, I don't know if it's green or just, is there trees there, or yeah, there's trees. Can you see that? Can you see those trees? Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So these are green. These are all green areas. Look, these are green areas. Forests. in Arabia that people are not aware about. Here's Ib, that town of Ib that I showed you. Look at that. That looks like India, a rainforest in India. All right, everybody. Thank you very much. Jazakallah khair for today's lesson.
Thank you,
Allah reward
Ustad.
us and everything.
Thank you.
And thank you, Ustad.
Thank you for joining.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next week, inshallah. Jazakallah khair.
Thank you, Mr. Amir.
Welcome.
آله عدد كمال الله وكما يليق بكماله اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على أسعد ما محمد وعلى آله عدد كمال الله وكما يليق بكماله اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على نور الهدى محمد وعلى آله عدد كمال الله وكما يليق بكماله اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم